for a lot of us is it's the recommendations for tenure. I just had a chance today to really think back about the process that people have gone through, the 11 people that are joining are on the agenda for us tonight, and all of the system that supports a lot of it. I'm sorry, I heard some feedback all of a sudden. But if you think about it, these individuals have invested a lot in their education and their experiences here with us in Bronxville, and they have been mentored, they have been coached. We have, as a board, invested in their professional development. And so there's a great amount of excitement as we consider these recommendations tonight. I also had a chance this afternoon to go spend a couple hours with Mara and some members of the Bronxville Public Library, and spent time with two of the high school teachers along with the high school librarian. And it really struck me, their passion for problem solving, their passion for doing things new, their passions for just making sure that our kids were getting the most dynamic, effective education they could possibly have. And so it was just a great honor to be able to see that face to face again and again and again. We have a school to be such proud of. And as those individuals kind of start a next chapter, we also are saying goodbye tonight, as we accept the resignation of Trisha. And so Trish, I'm sure we'll say things many times over and over before you leave, but a very heartfelt thank you to what you have brought to the school and all of those hundreds of kids or thousands of kids that you have touched. You have touched all of us, and we are so happy for you as you go into this next chapter of your life, but please know that you'll be forever in our hearts. So thank you. And with that, we'll have to approve the minutes of the last meeting in March. Do I have a motion to approve? I see Jack's hand. A second by Tom Evans. Is there any discussion? Okay, so moved. Oh, everybody in favor? Sorry. Okay, I see a bunch of hands. Okay. Roy, turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see faces. That's about all I get to see these days, but hello. Just a very brief update, and then we'll get into the evening's presentations and the tenure reviews. But just a quick update on COVID and where things sit right now. That news is very good. Actually, the number of cases that we've had has really diminished significantly. I don't think we've had any, knock on wood, had any new ones this week. Either that or they're not telling me. But no, but I don't think we've had any this week. Last week, I think we had one or two where we had to quarantine a few people, but not that many. So the concerns that we had following the spring break didn't pan out, which was terrific. We worried about that. Our staff vaccinations are running extremely high. I'm sure we're over 80% of our staff now who have been fully vaccinated. We're starting to see a number of our students become vaccinated now, which is another good thing, particularly our high school seniors, but a number of juniors as well. Sophomores are starting to get vaccinated. So that's all terrific for us as we fight this thing. So the news, fortunately, is good. Even as you saw in New York State and in Westchester County, the rates are dropping significantly. There have been some new guidelines put out regarding physical distancing and the potential of removing barriers in the classrooms soon. We're kind of analyzing those now. This has not been a full direction. We've gotten some conflicting information from the Department of Health, but we're going to be analyzing that to see what we can do. But I think because things have been working well for us, I'm inclined to leave everything as it is currently, rather than risk it, because again, we're in a good place and I don't want to disrupt that. But I know teachers and students, for that matter, would love to get rid of the barriers as soon as we possibly can. It just makes for a difficult classroom environment. And as soon as we get a full okay on that, we will certainly look into that. The 3 feet guidelines is really for the elementary school. At the middle and high school, they recommend that we stay at 6 feet, but you can go to 3 feet if you are in pods or cohorts, which it's very difficult for us to do. So I think for the time being, we're going to hold steady on what we're doing. We're starting to talk about end of the year activities in some form of normalcy, which is really nice. It's almost like we can breathe again a little bit here. First, starting with Memorial Day, as you know, it's a big day for our community as a way to honor our veterans. And so my current thinking is to have an in-person Memorial Day celebration on the front lawn, but limit the number of students that will attend in person, but we'll live stream it for anybody in the community and in the classrooms as well for any student who's not seeing it on the front lawn. So we'll be inviting our veterans. Our band is going to play out front as they have in the past. We'll have the Girl Scouts there as they have done in the past, and we'll do a quote unquote normal Memorial Day, just with not as many students in front. We will have some participation, our students, certainly the kindergartners should be out there, and we'll try to have as many as we can separated safely on the front lawn to view it. And then, as I said, we'll live stream the rest of it to the community and the classrooms. Our 5th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade commencement/graduations are being planned, and we are planning for full in-person for that, hopefully outside with good weather. And I think at this point, I'm comfortable and confident saying that we can at least have the graduate and 2 parents present for the ceremony. If there's a way to increase that number, we'll certainly look at doing that. But I think we're at least confident in saying that at the moment. And we know we'll have a senior prom. And, people have asked, why is it only seniors? But it's really limited a lot to the venue that we're using. We can only fit 150 people there. And one of the things that's the venue is requiring is either proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test within 72 hours of the event. So that's prompted a number of our students to get vaccinated, which is just terrific for all of us. So things are moving along. It's just really nice to be able to talk about end of the year activities and whatever we can capture for our students at the end of the year, we will certainly do that to give them something, some form of motivation to stay with us here. And then finally, we do have our board vote, budget vote and Board of Ed election coming up on May 18th. I would ask that the public be on the lookout for a budget brochure that'll be coming out, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks from now or so, 4 weeks from now, but prior to the vote, to pay attention to that. We're pretty confident in the budget that we're putting forth to the voters. We're within cap. So we're in a good place with that. And the capital project side, the atrium is in the home stretch. We're getting there. It's a little bit longer than we anticipated, but I did see the custom made benches in place now, and they're looking pretty good. And the floor is entirely done. And now they're working on the outside. They actually did some plantings on the outside by where the big chiller is. So they're dressing up the outside as well. So we're going to get there within the next couple of weeks, I'm sure. But it's really looking nice, and it'll just add to the whole celebration as we go into the spring season. So that's pretty much the update that I have for everyone. But at this time, what I'd like to do is change the agenda around a little bit and ask that that we go right into tenure recommendations as our first item of business. And I will, if you're okay with that, Arlene, I'll turn it over to Rachel to introduce the tenure candidates who are on the agenda this evening, and ask the principals will be mentioning each one by name as well.
To Rachel, we go. You're on mute, Rachel.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Arlene. As Arlene alluded to earlier this evening in her opening remarks, this is really one of the most important actions that the board takes in terms of faculty members who are eligible for tenure. They have gone through a rigorous process here in Bronxville, 3 or 4 year probationary period, being observed both announced and unannounced throughout each school year by a variety of administrators, and really working with us to help ensure that we're doing right by all of our students. So this evening we have 11 tenure candidates, and I believe that's on the heels of a retirement incentive we may have offered. I am going to start us off. I've asked each of the principals to speak briefly about each of the candidates, and we certainly will have more time throughout the school year to celebrate them. But I'm going to start us off with Rosemary Booty, who is before you this evening for tenure as a speech language pathologist. We've actually had the pleasure of knowing her since 2012 when she was initially hired as a part-time speech language pathologist to service students with disabilities in the 2 private schools within Bronxville. And then upon a retirement, we had a full-time opening in 2017, and Rose quickly came to the surface as being the highest qualified candidate. And since then, she has not proved us wrong. She is an outstanding collaborator with both the special ed teachers as well as the team of teachers that also service the special class students. And she really works closely with the families to ultimately help ensure that between the school and the family, we have a strong partnership to help ensure that the language needs of the students are being met on a daily basis. So next is Anne about Sarah Kaminsky.
So it's my pleasure this evening to speak briefly about Sarah Kaminsky, who is up for tenure in English, secondary English. Sarah cares deeply about her students and builds strong relationships with them that support their growth and development as readers and writers. She's always open and willing to try new approaches, incorporate new texts, and collaborate with her colleagues to share what she's working on and adjust what needs to be improved. She's an incredibly reflective practitioner and always includes her colleagues in the process as well. She's been a wonderful addition to our English department, both as a strong instructor, a supportive teacher to her students, and a collaborative colleague.
Thank you, Anne. Tom, would you like to speak about Carol Ann Del Giudice?
Good evening. Carol Ann Del Giudice has been in the district for a number of years, but she has only this year come to the middle school. And she joined the middle school faculty this year as our 6-8 computer teacher, a role that she's taken on with great zeal and success, bringing an elevated curriculum and a fresh perspective to our students on all 3 grade levels. Capitalizing on her formidable work in the elementary school, she successfully created a strong foundation for computer and robotics skills. And now Carol Ann is building a rich program that is responsive to high school computer science offerings while bringing excitement and hands-on experience to students on a daily basis in the middle school. Learning the elements of computer science with Ms. Del Giudice has become an exciting and rigorous endeavor, and our school is already better as a result of her being with us. It is with great honor that I recommend her to you for tenure.
Thank you, Tom. Tricia, Derek DiRienzo.
It's my pleasure to recommend Mr. Derek DiRienzo for tenure in the area of elementary teacher. He currently teaches 4th grade. Derek is very thoughtful in the planning of his instruction, and he's able to differentiate based on the strengths and needs of his students. He is innovative in his lesson planning as well and creates lessons that incorporate student interests and authentic experiences for them. He creates a classroom environment that is rigorous and supportive, and he always finds ways to foster leadership with his students. He is also very flexible with his instruction, and he assesses student progress. And he's really a master at coaching them through so they meet their goals. Derek has also proven to be a leader among our faculty. He's played an integral role in our diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And he also leads our students and our student council and promotes leadership and engaged citizenship throughout our school community. So it is my pleasure to recommend him this evening.
Thank you, Tricia. Tom, Eva Gambino.
Eva Gambino has successfully taught classes in all 3 grade levels of middle school since joining our faculty in 2017. And in the process, she's elevated the experience of learning for her students. Her students engage with new ideas and learn how to communicate their understanding and connections more effectively. Eva prides herself on helping her students learn to think critically and to become comfortable with the ambiguity, sometimes the mixed messages and variable conclusions that studying history can evidence. She helps students learn to properly vet documents and validate sources for accuracy, and brings them into the process of developing an understanding of what constitutes reliable source matter. Eva brings a rich array of resources and related content to students to evaluate in their quest to make meaning of what can at first seem like disparate and confusing information. These are the gifts that Ms. Gambino gives to her students every day. And it is my pleasure to recommend Ms. Gambino for tenure tonight.
Thank you, Tom. Anne Alexander Valley.
Ms. Gadali has demonstrated a passion for her content area, a strength in lesson design, and a real connection with her students that aids in her delivery of Spanish instruction. She's got an extremely engaging classroom and plans for each moment of every lesson to ensure that her students are developing Spanish skills in listening, speaking, writing, and reading. She also regularly engages in professional development opportunities to keep up to date with the most current thinking around language acquisition, and then brings that information back to her colleagues to share and work with her colleagues on redesigning lessons and units. It's my pleasure this evening to recommend her for tenure.
Thank you, Anne. Trisha, Megan Hand.
Miss Megan Hand is a third grade teacher, and she collaborates very closely with her team to ensure that the curriculum is meeting the needs of her students. She thinks critically about the New York State standards, as well as the elements of the Bronxville Promise to differentiate her instruction. She paces her lessons appropriately to increase student engagement, and she assesses her students very thoughtfully. Megan relates well to her students also. She creates a positive classroom environment and helps them feel safe and supported. She collaborates also closely with our support staff in order to address any specific social emotional needs that may arise. Megan's a reflective practitioner, and she's always looking for ways to improve her practice. She's taken advantage of a lot of professional development opportunities around instructional technology and in literacy. So it is without hesitation I recommend Miss Megan Hand for tenure this evening.
Thank you, Trisha. Megan Hansen.
Also my pleasure to recommend another Megan, Mrs. Megan Hansen, a third grade teacher as well. Her biggest strength as an educator is her ability to differentiate for all learners. She carefully analyzes formative and summative assessments to plan her small groups or for one-on-one conferences. She tracks the progress of her students towards meeting their goals or the goals of the unit. She's a very valued member of her third grade team and collaborates closely with them, and she makes significant contributions around curriculum and lesson planning. Megan creates a positive classroom environment. It's supportive. She helps her students feel ownership over the classroom as well. Megan's also looking for ways to improve her practice, and she takes workshops around instructional technology and on peer mentoring and coaching. So it's also my pleasure to recommend Mrs. Megan Hansen this evening.
Thank you, Trisha. And Claire Halaku.
And Mrs. Claire Holico, she started out as a classroom teacher, and she now is with us as our instructional technology teacher and staff developer. So it's an honor to recommend her for tenure this evening as well. Claire consistently puts the needs of her students first in every way possible. She is an expert at scaffolding instruction whenever necessary. She questions in a way that teaches the students to think critically about their own learning. Claire is also a very flexible teacher, and she has multiple points of entry and multiple strategies to use for struggling learners. She has a positive, caring, and thoughtful demeanor, and that really allows her to relate well to her students. As a professional developer, Claire works closely with grade level teams of teachers to help them accomplish their own goals around instructional technology. And this year in particular, she is sought after in many ways from our faculty, and she works to support them and really goes above and beyond. Claire has taken on a leadership role within our school as well in our work around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and she provides professional development opportunities for the faculty in that area. And she also has led various book studies for professional development, and she's always seeking to expand her own knowledge. So it's my honor to recommend Claire Holoku this evening.
Thank you, Tricia. And June Kim.
Ms. Kim has demonstrated a passion for her content area and contributed significantly within her classroom, within the department, and across the high school to the development of rich science programs for our students, and has served as a strong advocate for students' social and emotional health and well-being. Ms. Kim's training as an engineer has provided her students and the department with innovative projects that connect scientific concepts with practical applications. A recent graduate shared, quote, "She was one of the most important people in my and a lot of my classmates' experiences in high school because she has the knowledge and enthusiasm to expose us to top-level STEM disciplines and experiences." Ji-Yoon Kim has been a tremendous asset to the high school through her work within the science department, infusing engineering and into the content and her instruction. She also recently took on the AP Computer Science Principles course and is teaching that and encouraging students, in particular female students, to pursue computer programming. She's a caring and dedicated teacher and a smart and collaborative colleague, and it's my pleasure to recommend her for tenure this evening.
Thank you, Anne. And the final candidate this evening, Tricia, Laura Matthews.
Laura Matthews is a third grade teacher. She collaborates very well with her colleagues. She thinks critically about how she plans her lessons, and she provides additional challenges and supports for small groups of students. Her lessons also have a high level of student engagement. She creates a classroom that's also positive and supportive and rigorous. Laura really goes above and beyond to support her students socially and emotionally. And she collaborates with special education teachers and our school psychologists to implement any types of academic or behavioral interventions that are necessary. Laura has taken on a leadership role within our school with our response to intervention team. She serves on that team as the facilitator and the general education teacher to offer specific interventions for students who may need them. And we benefit from her knowledge and expertise in that area. So it's my pleasure to recommend Mrs. Laura Matthews this evening.
Thank you, Anne and Tom and Tricia. So Arlene, before you, you have the 11 faculty members who are eligible to receive tenure.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for all your work, and also to the principals for your work. We really appreciate this fine group of people that you brought to us this evening. So may I have a motion to approve the tenure recommendations, resolutions A through K? I see Tom Curran as first hand and Jack, excuse me. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Connie, the motion passes. Roy, back to you.
Great, thank you. Congratulations to our new tenurees. And that's really a tribute to them and the principals who supervise them, and Rachel as well. And we do have some outstanding and high quality people that are going to be staying on with us. So congratulations. We look forward to many years with them. Before I turn it over to our guest, or ask Martin to introduce our guest, Dr. Meyer, and our two students, Isabel and Sydney, I just want to make a very quick note, because I know we'll be, before you'll be Tricia's letter of resignation, as you mentioned earlier. And, there'll be plenty of time for us to celebrate Tricia before she leaves us. But since it's on the agenda, I just want to acknowledge the work that she has done at our elementary school and her outstanding leadership over the course of her time here in Bronxville. We are indebted to her, and I know that she will be deeply, deeply missed by all in our community. Rye has made an excellent choice in announcing that Tricia will be the assistant superintendent for her curriculum. I know she takes part of Bronxville with her no matter where she goes, And we are just so thankful that we've had the time that we had with Tricia, and thank her again for her really outstanding leadership and everything that she does for us as a leadership team and as a school community. So Tricia, thank you, and certainly all the best to you. All right. At this time, Mara, would you mind introducing our guest, please?
Surely, it's my pleasure tonight to introduce Dr. Bill Meyer and two of his students, Isabella Friedberg and Sydney Tuck, who are going to speak to some work they have been doing with Sarah Lawrence College in collaboration with students from Mount Vernon's public schools and Yonkers public schools.
Great, thank you. Brad, is it possible to share that presentation?
Sure. I also gave you permission to share.
Okay,
just so
I
you
can go
yeah,
ahead and
because I
share
didn't
that
know when you
myself.
needed
Great.
to advance forward. No, all good.
There you go. Thank you. So thank you so much for giving us the time to talk about the work that we've been doing over the last 10 months. And actually, I think it's even more poignant if you consider the events of the last few hours, because in many ways, this idea and this concept was a response. It's very much connected to those events, and in many ways inspired by a letter that the superintendent of our school shared with the community in June. So what I want to do tonight is just give you a little background on the Justice Fellowship, its connection to Sarah Lawrence, its connection to the Mellon Foundation, as well as sort of the collaboration we've created with Yonkers, as well as Mount Vernon. I also want to talk to you and share sort of the goals of the work of this year, let you have a chance to hear some of the student experiences, and then hopefully also acknowledge some of our intentions going forward. So just a brief overview, and I think, well, as a historian, history matters, and the context to the creation of this partnership, in my opinion, is important, as well as the goal of this. So as I said, Roy shared a letter last June, and I remember reading that letter and thinking, this was a very powerful call, not just to action or thought, but also, most importantly, to dialogue. And how can we begin to engage our students in Bronxville in conversations that are not just within the classrooms, but also the larger community that they're part of, and expand even their own notion of community? I reached out to Roy with this idea, and initially the concept was we would create a speaker series, maybe 2 or 3 speaking events, and allow students the opportunity to hear speakers talk about issues of equity, justice, education, healthcare, a whole plethora of topics. And we got a lot of support for that. And I also reached out to one of my partners who I've been working with for a long time, Mara Gross, who is actually the director of community outreach at Sarah Lawrence. And I said, we want to put together this partnership and also leverage the work of the Mellon grant that Sarah Lawrence had obtained last year, which was looking to build greater partnerships in the region. So we began to develop this idea, and one of the components that came out of it is, more than just having these speakers, we should build a parallel program where students can have an experience engaging in research, engaging in authentic dialogue with their peers, and taking a deep dive into one of these topics and themes. We ended up settling on education for this first year. We thought that was a great topic that would resonate with many of the students. We also felt like we could deliver in terms of those components. And we also connected it to justice. And this in part is tied to Sarah Lawrence, which has made this whole year, the theme of this year, about justice. So we felt like that was a great way of leveraging that partnership and building that support. So what we needed to do then is build this fellowship. And what we thought to ourselves is, we'll identify students from the 3 school districts, Bronxville, Mount Vernon, Yonkers, but also students from Sarah Lawrence. And initially we said we'll take 11th and 12th grade students from the high school and anyone from the college. We built small cohorts of 5 students from each of these groups, and then brought them together to build an even larger cohort of 25 students. Actually, if you look at the group in Bronxville, we have 6 students, and that's because I thought this was an opportunity to utilize or engage the students who were originally identified for the Student Global Leadership Institute in Hawaii last summer, who never had that opportunity. And this seemed like a great way to continue their engagement as well as, their passion for this work and this level of service. So from that, we also identified 2 juniors, and those 2 juniors at Bronxville were in the Humanities Research Seminar. They'll also be sharing with you some of their experience later in a few minutes. But we built this cohort. We brought these students together, and we decided through conversations with those students that in this exploration of education, we wanted to have them develop action-based research projects. And we ended up settling on developing oral histories around a specific subtopic of the issue of education within the community. So we have 4 different piloted oral histories that are actually being put together right now. In fact, the last meeting of the Justice Fellowship is occurring as I speak. I was just on that Zoom call about 20 minutes ago, and I'll be back on it at the end of this evening. But they're putting those pieces together to share with a broader audience. We ended up utilizing the 2 Mellon Fellows that Sarah Lawrence hired as a part of this grant to support the tech aspect of that work. And then we also were able to engage the graduate art of teaching students at Sarah Lawrence to serve as mentors for these 4 groups of cohorts of students that we assembled. So it was a very thought out, scaffolded process to try to support students, not just in research, but also in conversation and dialogue. I should say we ran 2 of the speaking events. Maybe you had a chance to see those flyers in the fall. We ran an event in November that looked at larger systemic issues within education. And there we leveraged many of our partners in the region to participate, from early childhood ed to actually an education historian. And then this spring, we ran a second panel where we brought in individuals who'd grown up in all of these, in 4 of the communities, the Bronx as well, in Yonkers, Mount Vernon, and Bronxville, to speak about their lived experience. I don't know if you had a chance to hear Andrea Shepard, but she came to Bronxville in 6th grade and just gave a very, very powerful talk about her experience in Bronxville. It was incredible. So all of this is what we've been building and developing. And I think if you look at the goals of the program, we've really, in this first year, and we consider this sort of our pilot year, have really made great progress in terms of achieving those. One is really reimagining the walls of the classroom and what the classroom is. And I think you look at Bronxville, you look at Bronx River work, you look at Humanities Research Seminar, we're constantly trying to push up against where students see their learning beginning, but more or less ending. And that's a really important piece. The second thing, and I think this connects to that dialogue, is expanding notions of community. Having students, and I think one of the real challenges is, well, there are so many assets that we have available to us. Often students, because of those assets and resources, don't leave the community, or essentially the boundary of the community, and thus a whole host of resources and conversations aren't occurring. And we thought that was important to also challenge. And lastly, we wanted to leverage some of these existing partnerships that we've built over the years, whether that's with Sarah Lawrence, through the Mellon Foundation, but also our partners in Yonkers and Mount Vernon. This next piece, and this is where I'm going to pass it over in a moment to Sydney and then Isabel. I think all this work, and I even think about this evening, and I found myself as an educator, as I was sort of watching the news unfold, always thinking about, what does this conversation look like? How do you create opportunities for authentic dialogue with students, amongst students, but also the broader community? And those pieces we've really made at the center of this work, ideas of deep listening, humility, selflessness, but also a collective exchange, a co-creation of knowledge, a larger purpose, which I think is so important to amongst young people, but all of us in the work that we do. And of course, lastly, growth, the potential for growth. So I'm going to pass pass it over to Sydney, who was gracious enough to volunteer, although I put that in quotes whenever I said about students, but volunteer to share some of her experience over the last year and the work she's done as part of the Justice Fellowship. Sydney?
Hi, so my name is Sydney Tuck and I'm a junior at the Bronxville High School. So like Mr. Meyer said, I was first introduced to this experience through being in the humanities class after I approached him about a possible research paper surrounding special education coming from a past where I've interned in the Bronxville special education classroom. So my specific work in the fellowship is creating a oral history podcast surrounding the inequities and segregation in special education. So the large part of the fellowship is that I've learned is the importance of diverse perspectives. So working with students from diverse communities and different socioeconomic backgrounds has allowed me to really break down the topic that I've become passionate about and that I've identified in my community. So I'm currently working on this podcast right now, and I've interviewed about 6 different people from all across the country. And I came to a point where I had people emailing me about my research and wanting me to share my experience in collecting these different oral histories. And at the moment, I'm breaking them down and kind of putting them into different groups and trying to share as many perspectives as I can. And that's really what the Justice and Education Fellowship for me is really about. It's about having these difficult conversations and having these in a space where you feel comfortable sharing your own experiences while also having other people tell you, well, this is my experience, and having those conversations about the similarities between everyone's communities and also identifying how they're so largely different in different ways.
Yeah, that's great. Sydney will be applying to graduate school next year, so she'll be looking for recommendations. But in seriousness, it's pretty amazing. She's been contacted by professors in New Zealand, and she's been on listservs and really taken a deep dive into this work. So I appreciate that and appreciate you sharing. Isabel, would you like to share some of the work you've done?
Sure. So I was actually also introduced to this fellowship program with the same way as Sydney. I was taking the Humanities Research Seminar class with Mr. Meyer. And it was really a great class where we learned a lot about educational inequities and how they play out throughout the country and as well as in other countries. And I think what's been really great about the fellowship is that it's given me the opportunity to kind of see what we learn in class play out into real circumstances and into real life, especially in school districts that we're familiar with. And so my project that I'm working on currently is an oral history surrounding the fiscal inequities in the school districts that we're looking at, including Bronxville, Mount Vernon, and the Yonkers school districts. And within that oral history, we're including interviews from both professors of education at both Columbia, Harvard, and also superintendents of the school districts. So that's been great to honestly hear firsthand perspectives from everyone who knows a lot about what they're talking about and can really give the project a boost and hopefully be shared and with people and give some really important information. And so also one other great thing about the fellowship is that it's a great barrier breaker, and it's one transcended the limits of COVID, and we've been able to continue it really throughout the pandemic and been able to communicate and still do great work even when it's online and we haven't met in person. And also kind of breaks the barriers of the classroom and really allows for exploration outside of the classroom setting and deeper work and kind of a hands-on experience into the stuff that we're learning. So yeah, it's been a really great experience, and I recommend it to anyone who's interested in fields of education, specifically educational inequity, and the things that they can do to better our community.
Thank you, Isabel, but it's important to note it's only available to 11th and 12th graders. So anyone who is listening now, that's not an option, although you are always welcome to speaking events. But in truth, I really appreciate the endorsement both of you have given in the work that you've done. I think actually Isabel raises one really important point, which is the way we've been able to utilize Zoom to bring together students from these 4 places. We actually have one student zooming from Hawaii, someone's in Pennsylvania. So we've really tried to leverage the existing technology to make this partnership possible. I think the last thing I would share about the work of the fellowship is sort of our goals moving forward. One of those goals is actually, and we're working hard on this, is to make this a college credit course at Sarah Lawrence, and that credit would be available not just for the college students who take the class, but also the high school students. So that's something we've been working pretty hard on, and I actually just had a meeting last week with one of the graduate deans, and it looks like a real possibility for next year. The second piece is to expand the fellowship to include more schools, more students, more Bronxville students. And that, I think, is an important piece to make this possible. And the third is really to just utilize this space as a place for authentic conversation and dialogue, something that both Sydney and Isabel brought up. And I think it's just so crucial as we think about our students going forward beyond Bronxville into college, the types of conversations that they need to be prepared for, types of conversations that go beyond just textbooks and classrooms, but into our communities. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bill, and thank you, Isabel and Sydney. Really terrific stuff to listen to, and thanks for laying that groundwork for future students and future partnerships. It's nice that you're our first ones to have that experience, and because of the success that I think you're having, it opens the door for other possibilities for us as well. So I thank you, and to Bill especially, because when I approached Bill about the possibility of doing some additional work over the summer, wasn't quite sure what I'd get in response, but he jumped on it immediately, and you can tell how passionate he is about the topic, because he just went into it, and it was like he never looked back, and it was just terrific. So Bill, thank you for all that you continue to do and the reach out you do for us, and getting our students involved in the project. So appreciate that. Arlene, I'm not sure if any board members have any questions for them as we're here.
Do we have any questions for Bill
Or the students.
or the students? I have one, Dr. Meyer. I just have to ask, what have you learned? Like when you look back in 5 or 10 years from now, and you look back, what will be the one thing that you will really remember from this project?
Yeah, well, first I just want to apologize for the darkening space. I have 2 little kids who sleep upstairs, and as the sun set, it got a little darker in here. But I think that's an absolutely great question, and I think the biggest thing I've learned from this is to get out of the way. I mean, you create the space, and then you let the students engage in these conversations. And yes, there has to be some intentionality. There has to be purpose. You build norms. But once that takes place, I mean, there's far more a richness that can come out of those conversations without necessarily them being moderated by an adult. That's really been impressive for me. So I think that's a big takeaway for me.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. I don't have a question for the students, but I just say thank you very much for participating with us tonight. It was really insightful, and just how much you guys are breaking through those walls of the classroom is really, it's really great.
Arlene, that's all I have as part of my report. So if you want to move on.
Yep, let's go back to Rachel to finish up on certified staff, etc. Floor is yours.
And by the way, the students can sign off, as I know they're anxious to get home to get homework,
Yes.
right? So
Great idea.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. I have before you a number of resolutions for you to consider. Leading them is, unfortunately, our need to accept Tricia Murray's resignation. Both Arlene and Roy kind of took the wind out of my sail, but suffice it to say that we have benefited from your 7 years in Bronxville. You came in as an assistant principal, and you never would have known it. Your learning curve was steep, and you just hit the ground running and made our elementary school and our broader Bronxville community better. And for that, we will forever be grateful. And Rye is certainly fortunate to have you leading their helm of curriculum and instruction. So the first resolution this evening is to accept Dr. Murray's resignation. In addition, you have a number of other resolutions before you this evening. We had the opportunity to speak in executive session regarding a staff member and a general release and settlement agreement. In addition, we have FMLA leaves, as well as a result of that, slight changes to middle school advisories. There are a number of leave replacements, some resulting in some internal shifting to make sure that we have all of our classes and, more importantly, all of our students covered. We do unfortunately have another resignation to consider this evening, and that is of Kathy Sosa, who has been a school nurse with us for 22 years. First, she started over at the St. Joseph School, and then we were able to bring her over to the Bronxville School. She is really going to be irreplaceable. She is calm and wise and has been an incredible resource for all of us for decades. So we will begin that search to attempt to find someone to replace her. In addition, we have resolutions, 4 different resolutions having to do with payroll. We have the resignation of a payroll clerk. We have an appointment of a new payroll clerk, and then both of them to be working in evenings together to make sure that between those resignations, we make sure everyone is paid on May 15th. In addition, the board is considering this evening an agreement between the district and the Bronxville Teachers Association, specifically as it relates to the use of bereavement days for the remainder of the school year. And then there is a revised co-curricular activity list, because we are pleased to announce that we will be having a high school musical. And as a result, we have stipends attached to that, as well as one revision to the spring coaches roster that had already been approved by the board. So if you would consider this evening, please, items A through R.
Thank you, Rachel, very much. May I have a motion to approve items A through R?
So moved.
I see Jack and Mike Finley. Connie? Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Connie, motion passes.
Is that
Thank you.
Tom and no? I didn't see your hand.
I abstain. No, I abstain as to one item, the spring coaches, because I think it's pertinent to something that was being discussed in executive session.
Okay.
Thank you, Connie.
And I vote yay on the rest of it.
Okay, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We'll start with a financial report for the current year, which is, this is the whipsaw year. Going back to July, we were projecting a lot of doom and gloom. We had probably a $500,000 deficit that we were looking to fill. And then lo and behold, the state came through and filled that $500,000 deficit. And then on the expenditure side, we're seeing some savings in a lot of different areas. So the current projection is now over $600,000. And that's probably gonna, from this point, it usually goes up somewhat throughout the rest of the year as we close purchase orders. And I think we're gonna make a lot of progress at making up the $800,000. Certainly the $500,000 is covered with the allocation of fund balance towards offsetting next year's tax levy. And we may make a little progress, so we may not have to hit the reserves as hard as we thought we would.
So Dan, just to paint that picture again, we, in our budget workshop conversations, we've talked about the $500,000 that we need, correct? And so that'll come out of the 603, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so where do you see the other 300 coming from?
We're already 100 into that with the 600.
Right.
So if we realize more surplus as we're closing purchase orders through the rest of the year, we'll make a little more progress towards that 800, so that we're not going to have to hit the reserves as hard as we thought we would have to.
Great.
Yeah, that's good.
Dan, I have an ongoing issue, as you know, with the apparent presumption that subcontractors are entitled to the remainder, the delta of allowance funds, separate and apart from any shown need to draw down upon allowance funds for work having been performed. So one way to save money, I think, is to limit drawdowns to allowance funds to actual change orders for work performed or materials provided.
Sure, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments on Dan's financial report? Okay, thank you, Dan. Why don't you take us to the financial action items?
We have a few this evening. One includes a late addition. The first one is, I believe, awarding a bid to Royal Coach Lines for athletic and field trip transportation. We decided that a change was necessary, and it's a change that's working out very well over the last few weeks. And we look forward to carrying it forward for the next 15 months through June 30th of next year. Royal Coach Lines, they have in the past. They won our bid, I don't know, probably up until about 5 years ago. And they're back, and we're looking forward to working with them again. They were the only bidder.
So Dan, I
That
know.
surprise you?
Oh yeah.
Not really. I was happy to get a bidder. It's very tough out there to find someone to serve what we need, because a lot of these bus companies are taking kids to and from school at the time we need them to do athletic runs. But the fact that Royal Coaches is currently supplying our private school transportation, I think they're probably going to use some of those buses that are taking kids back to Bronxville from private schools and shoot right into athletic runs.
Dan, do you have any service level concerns?
Not compared to where we were.
Can't be worse than last time.
Yes. So given the fact that we hope they show up, really, do you have any concerns?
I expect a higher level of service. I do not expect perfection, although we're going to strive for it. But I expect a much higher level of service. And I think Joe's on here, and I think he can affirm that we're all breathing a little easier compared to where we were.
Okay. So may I have a motion to award the bid for the transportation to Royal Coaches as it's outlined in the agenda? I see Jack.
And John.
And John, great. Do I have any further conversation? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstains? Okay, thank you, Dan.
Next, we have a foundation donations. And there was a late addition. My cover memo covers DF 21-40 and DF 21-41. And there was a late addition this morning of OCG-21-33, which also relates to the high school musical outdoor production. So we have two relating to the outdoor production, kind of Shakespeare on the Lawn in Bronxville. And then a $2,100 donation for middle school microscopes. And, these donations really get to the core of what we're trying to do, especially in this COVID year, to give kids as many experiences as we can, so that they don't have to miss everything and the year isn't a total loss like in some schools. So we have much gratitude towards the foundation in helping us move this production outside. We don't have audio equipment currently that can allow us to do this. So the foundation is helping us out with that.
That's great. So can I have a motion to approve the 3 grants?
Moved. John and Tom, Jack and Tom.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Abstentions? Okay, thank you again to the foundation for allowing both the microscopes and the outdoor production. Dan, the floor continues to be yours.
This is the one night a year that the reason we're on a Tuesday is it's BOCES night.
It's BOCES night.
By law, we have to vote on their administrative and capital budgets, which are assessed to us, whether we vote yes or no, as long as most of the component districts approve it. In the past, the board has sent BOCES a message when some of their costs have increased at a greater rate than our own costs have. And it appears that this year might be one of those years. Their administrative costs, particularly retiree benefits, have increased at a higher rate than our own expenditure budgets. So, it's up to the board how you want to vote on the BOCES.
Can you explain, their number's up 1.7% in the aggregate, but ours is up at 6.4%. And if you look at the last couple of years, I mean, we're double digit for several years. So what's driving that?
I'm sorry, John. You mean the well, I'm looking at the
Bronxville share.
Bronxville share.
Yeah, so we're up 6%, but the underlying budget that's being allocated to us is only up 1.7%, right?
It's based on our WADA reported, and I guess our population is actually flat to going down over the recorded period. So there must be like sharper drops in population in Westchester than ours out there.
Because the aggregate, the BOCES budget in the aggregate, if I look at it correct, if I'm right, is 15.6 million, then 15.3 going back in time. It's not that offensive. I mean, it's not great, but it's not. But when it's allocated to us, it starts to be really bad, right?
Yeah.
What are we doing wrong?
We're not shrinking in population and closing schools like some other districts are.
Is it possible to get the math of like the universal math that they're using to allocate?
Sure.
Dan,
I looked at these numbers, Dan. I'm sure there's some calculus behind it, but they just don't make sense to me. And just in general, they're compounding at 9.9% increases, which is, I don't own any business that gets 10% every year for the last 7 years. But they seem to be able to get that, and I don't understand their budgeting. Is it just a pass through? Whatever they spend, they just put on to the school districts and
allocated on a weighted per capita basis.
And who at BOCES? Who's looking out for us at BOCES? The school districts, like who from the school districts looking at BOCES saying, no, we don't think that's appropriate, or I don't think you ought to spend money on that.
We could send a representative. We haven't, but we could. Dan, I'd like to see some answers to the questions instead of just speculating.
Didn't we decline a couple of years ago to approve this for these very reasons that Michael's raising?
Yeah, last couple of years, Tom.
Yes.
So.
But I think the key question is or what we have to talk about is what Jack brings up. I mean, we are such a small district in in the pie, in the big pie of all this. And so until we want to make this a priority and have a representative who works with BOCES, we're going to be in the same spot every year. It's got to be one of our priorities. So are we ready to, let's have a conversation about that. I mean, Dan, you have always told us that you get a lot of value out of BOCES, correct?
Yeah, that's on the expense-driven pieces, the pieces that we use, technology, some special ed services, things of that nature, staff development. This is just, the pass-through. This is their overhead for their administration and their capital.
Right, so this is their infrastructure, but theirs is their infrastructure that supports all of those things.
Yes.
Yeah, but the point is, we don't know exactly what goes into that.
Yeah.
So we're being asked to approve something that we are wholly uninformed about.
Well, they have a budget document, and we could ask them to present that to us. I think last time we came here, they came and did that. It was probably about 10 years ago or so, and we asked them not to do that again.
But let me ask it as a practical matter. If we don't vote at all, if we, kind of collectively abstain as a district, their budget marches on, right? I mean,
exactly.
We're not stopping anything.
No.
So I don't understand why we have to be complicit in anything, particularly when we don't know what we're talking about.
Well, I don't, I just did the math again because these numbers don't make sense to me. I'm sure it does to BOCES, but so if you go back to 5 years ago, we picked up 1.38% of their total budget, and now we're at 1.8% of their total budget, and we're compounding at 10% a year.
Yep.
So I can't vote for something if I don't understand why that's occurring.
Is there an intermediate step, Dan, that we could take of having 1 or 2 board members go up and speak with BOCES so we can protect all 7 of us from sitting through the presentation?
I think what I could do is I could have a BOCES representative attend a finance committee meeting.
Sounds like
that would be helpful.
I would think that would be a good first step.
Yep.
Before that, can you just get some answers to the questions that have come up tonight?
I will contact them in the morning.
In the meantime, we still need to vote tonight.
Yes, well, we can abstain. We can vote yes, we can vote no.
So with that action plan, why don't we go ahead and take a vote? So may I have a motion to approve the 2021-2022 budget for BOCES? Just a motion to approve. Jack says, we have a second? I'll second it then so we can move forward. All in favor, say aye. Tom says, and Jack's, we have 2 ayes. All opposed? We got 4 opposed. Any abstain? Any abstentions? Okay. Connie, do you have that?
Okay, so I'm missing 1. I have 2 people.
I think I missed Jen. Jen, I'm sorry, I missed where your vote was.
Yeah, I said oppose.
I want to change mine to oppose.
Okay, so
Glenn,
Can we do that again?
yeah, I was going to say, should we do it again?
so let's make it unanimous.
Okay, unanimously all opposed. Okay. Okay.
Tom, is that opposed?
Yeah.
Tom Evans opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Dan, you want to take us to the trustees?
Yeah, there's 1 trustee running.
And he's from Eastchester.
And he used to be an air traffic controller.
Wow.
He's had the most varied background of anybody I've seen for a long time. So we did have a copy of at least a paragraph of a blurb about him. He's currently a real estate agent. He's been on the Eastchester board for, I believe, 9 years. He's 1 year at least as president. So he seems to have the experience of being a board member. So With that, may I have a motion to approve? Mike, thank you.
Mike
Jack?
and Jack.
Any further conversation? Discussion? Okay, all of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Connie, do you have what you need?
Yeah.
Okay,
7-0 in favor.
7-0 in favor. Dan, to facilities.
Roy gave an update of where we are on facilities. We're expecting the atrium very soon. They're finishing up some roofing items. And they're actually cleaning up the outside and demobilizing. So we're looking forward to getting our building back and hopefully getting contractors out of it, at least for some period of time. I think we need a facilities committee meeting within the next week or so to review where we are with removing or not removing the bulkhead in the gymnasium. Some issues have popped up there. So I'll be putting that together in the next week or so. And we do have some change orders in closing out the Innovation Center contract.
Correct.
And what we have is about $37,000 worth of unused allocations for contingency on that project, which will go unused.
So Dan, just in layman's term, are you just reducing the overall contract value?
Yes. The original contract was awarded at $535,000 with a $50,000 contract allowance.
Are you
We're
sure?
only using
Sure
about
wasn't 435? Sure wasn't 435?
Yes, I'm sorry, 435 with a $50,000 contract allowance. And we're only using about 13,000 of that allowance with these four change orders.
Do you want to go ahead and just address the door lock one? Because I know it'll raise an issue.
Yeah, it's costly because it's got all kinds of electronics in it that interface with our security system.
So is this like an entrance door?
Yes.
Did the finance committee have a chance to review these? I'm sorry, the facilities committee?
Facility committees did, yes.
Okay. And you got comfortable with the door locks, Jen?
Yes, Dan provided us with additional information, drawings, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a lot of money, but.
So can I have a resolution to approve the following change orders in 1 through 5?
So move.
A second? Is that Jen's hand? Any further conversation and discussion?
I have a question.
Sure.
Dan, none of these change orders represent drawdown against allowance funds for work for monies not representing work actually performed, materials actually supplied, or labor hours actually endeavored, correct?
They all go directly to those items.
Okay, so it's not one of these situations where there's a delta and they're submitting a change order for the remainder of the allowance fund based upon some presumption of entitlement.
No.
Then I vote yay.
In fact, we're taking back 37,000 of those allowance funds.
Thank you. I vote yay.
Okay, thank you, Tom. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. You got a unanimous vote, Connie. Dan, fire inspection notices.
Well, to get our CEO, we have fire inspection notices, and the board needs a resolution to approve them or accept them.
No resolution
No
needed.
resolution,
You have to give notice to
Just
the.
notification. Gotcha.
So Connie, we just need to give the notice to the public that we have received the fire Inspection
right.
certificate.
Fire inspection is conducted annually. We received the certificate of occupancy for the field maintenance building and a partial CO for the main building because the atrium project is not complete. I need to send out a legal notice. I'll be doing that tomorrow by the end of the week.
Perfect.
To be published, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Connie.
Thank you, Dan, for all of your reports. And now I'll turn it over, I'm assuming, to Joe for the athletic resolution. Joe, are you on mute?
Just unmuting right now.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to pull up the resolution. Give me for 1 second to find my resolution here. I was here 1 minute ago. 1 second. Roy, I believe I shared that with you. Am I correct?
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda. So the board has it in front of them, Joe. I think you would, if you don't mind, just explain what the purpose of the resolution is, would be good enough.
That'd be good. Agreed.
Okay. So as we all know, the state and the local have set forth guidelines for us to face in this year of COVID. So our resolution basically allows us to participate in high impact sports. The impact sports that they're considering for us in the spring would be any of our lacrosses. We've already approved the winter sports, the fall sports. This is the boys lacrosse only. It's still considered a high impact sport. So a resolution will be allowing us to participate in this properly for the spring season.
And Joe, that's why I was confused when I was reading this earlier, because it still lists out all of the fall sports. And so is that just double checking that that's accurate, that it should include all the fall and the spring sports?
It was a continuum from the whole year. When we put the resolution in January, we listed all our sports just to ensure that we were properly covered throughout the whole school year.
Okay, great. Thank you. So may I have a motion to approve the?
Motion.
Second.
Any conversation? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstains? Okay, Connie, you're good to go. Okay. I do not believe we have any board committees that have met that have not reported already. We've heard from facilities. Michael, you didn't have any, correct? Okay, so the agenda sets forth the next meetings. So we're ready to move towards public discussion. Do we have any questions in the queue?
Currently, no questions.
All right. Great. Hearing none. I have a
Move.
motion to adjourn. I see
Move.
Jack and I see Tom Evans. Jack and Tom Evans.
Okay.
All in favor, aye.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Not even gonna ask the next two questions because we're all tired. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.